There was another thing that I wanted to cover here. This was originally going to be what I led with, but our conversation went in different directions. But yeah, it was talking about the Fall Guy released like a week ago, and it's kind of underperformed, and it's on track to not really make any money for the studios. And people are a little bit perplexed by it because it should have been one of those 4-quadrant movies that kind of pleases everyone. It's an action comedy. It's got Ryan Gosling, who's kind of red hot at the moment in Hollywood. Emily Blunt, who's a very popular actress, a fairly easygoing story, and it came along at that early May release date, which kind of kicks off the summer movie season. And yeah, it's really underperformed. And there was an interesting article that came out from Screen Crush actually saying, "What the hell do people want out of movies now?" And I think that's a pretty good way of phrasing it because there's been a lot of complaints, obviously, in previous years, like, oh my God, stop just churning out superhero movies. Stop giving us remakes. Stop giving us reboots. Stop giving us endless sequels. And okay, this is a movie that hypothetically ticks all the boxes. It's an original IP. It's not a superhero movie. It's not a reboot. It's got, pretty likable stars in it. It's just a generic sort of action comedy. Doesn't try to go into too many other genres. And yet people aren't watching it. And it does make you wonder why. What are they missing here?
Well, think about it. Besides the prices, how much trust has been broken by Hollywood and the audience? I mean, it's not easy unless they hear it from friends and friends and friends or from you and everybody, they trust on YouTube to go, oh, this is a phenomenal flick.
I mean, yeah, but then you got big movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie last year. They can still succeed. It's just, I don't know what they're missing. It's the same deal with that Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Similar idea where it's like an action film with comedy elements, pretty likable cast, nothing too offensive there. Should be kind of a crowd-pleasing movie. Again, big flop.
I know it's been talked about before, the concept of, does the movie star even exist anymore? The person that you can attach to a film and it basically guarantees that it'll succeed because people want to watch it just because they're in it. And feels like people would have said Ryan Gosling is one of the few people who fills that slot or comes close to it. Which is interesting that this film comes out with him and Emily Blunt as well, who's popular. And like you said, a pitch on its face that seems pretty compelling of, yeah, you have fun. It's an action movie. It'll be great. And it's a bit of a romantic comedy as well. And yet for it to not make much of an impression at all is a bit strange. It is a little bit strange.
It is, but I really do believe when you look at the price, it's like, I don't know what it is for y'all, but like when I go to a movie, if I was going to take my girl, it's like for 2 people, right? You're going to look at least $60 just for tickets. So something has to move you, or you have to have people tell you that's great. I think the only movie stars really left are like Tom Cruise and Denzel Washington. Because if you put Ryan Gosling right now, this is just my guess, under any title of movie, do you think people will go see it because of Ryan Gosling? But typically when you put Cruise, people pack.
Well, I think that's kind of the interesting thing about this film, right? Is that this film it's not working. So, right. I mean, I guess it's kind of illustrating the point.
Let's not forget, it didn't work for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That film didn't pay its money back, I don't think. Or maybe
You could argue perhaps that Mission Impossible was just kind of swallowed up by Barbenheimer as well. And just, perhaps if it had been...
Isn't that fascinating, though? Mission Impossible Fallout made like $800 million. It was a massive... I think in retrospect, you can say they should have moved, but at the time, I don't think they should have thought that they needed to move. Out of the way for Oppenheimer, I don't think they could have known what was going to happen.
I also think Dead Reckoning just isn't that great. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and they freely admitted they were making it up as they went along. They didn't have a script to shoot from. But in the case of The Fall Guy, one of the things that Hollywood marketing, I think the real problem with the marketing departments today in Hollywood is they don't know their jobs. And it used to be that the marketing department, there was a guy who was at Lionsgate named Tim Palin. And he was a photographer himself, and he worked in marketing at Lionsgate and would design the campaigns for like the Saw films and the Hunger Games movies, and really talented, visionary marketing guy. And I think nowadays, the people at the studios, at least in marketing, they don't know how to develop an innovative marketing campaign. They're relying on, just like so many other people do, what came before. And they don't really know. They won't look outside their box. And I think when you watch the marketing, or you look at the marketing of the Fall Guy, it's very generic. Like they're showing you this stuff, and they're not telling you. Marketing has to tell you, why should you, as a fan of movies, or you want to have an entertaining time at the movies, why should you leave the house and go see this particular film in a theater? What is it? How is seeing this in a movie theater better than waiting to see it at home? And I'll tell you something, it's really interesting. If you look at the Marvels, which is their Marvel's biggest disaster, it's doing quite well on streaming. Because people looked at that movie, and whether you like the Marvels or not, it's still doing incredibly well for Disney streaming. But that movie had no reason. It was a TV show at best, and there was no reason to go see that movie in a movie theater, whether you like the MCU or not. And they have to tell you why. They have to make movies that you have to go and see in a theater. And The Fall Guy is a very well-made movie. I think it's actually a very satisfying time at the cinema. But the marketing didn't tell you that. The marketing has to tell you why. Why should you leave the house to go see this?
The marketing was fairly insubstantial, at least over here in the UK. Like I
Generic.
didn't really. And then there just wasn't enough of it. There was no TV commercials, really. There was no billboards for it that I could see. It was not on the sides of buses or anything. It wasn't made out to be a big deal. And I know the movie wasn't a mega budget film. Like I think it was 140 million, which is a lot of money, but compared to most blockbusters now. But yeah, it just feels like they put no effort into marketing it, and it's kind of a shame because it is a pretty fun film. It's not perfect by any measure.
No.
It's definitely a switch your brain off kind of film, but I liked it.
I haven't seen it. Is it like a popcorn movie drinker? Is it like a Saturday afternoon popcorn? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean it's not a spectacle or anything really. It's like a bit of a crime caper action comedy kind of thing, like where your protagonist is a stuntman, so he's got to use all his stuntman moves to get out of fights and everything.
Gotcha.
Gosling's pretty likable in it.
Cool.
Well, so I've seen it, and I didn't like it. I found it's one of those movies where it's like you have to turn your brain off. I think you have to just be like, yeah, it'll be fun, watching have stunts and then having jokes and stuff like that. Because I mean, you actually think about the way that the plot's constructed.
The plot is nonsense.
The plot is a mess, and the characters are kind of crazy as well. They're kind of like these sort of caricature, like absurd characters who don't react particularly consistently or logically to anything that's happening. It feels like it's very much a film where it's structured around, we want to have a reason for action and stunts, and as well as meta commentary on the film industry as well, which it offers. I suppose what I'm curious about is how well do you think that film sustains a conversation between people who've seen it? Like that they'd get out of the theater. How much do you think it'd be on their mind? That they'd want to talk about it, and that those conversations would compel their friends to go watch it.
Well, there's not a whole lot to say about it.
That's sort of the point, though, isn't it? That makes it, in a sense, a not particularly remarkable story, in the sense that what you have is generic film doing generically at box office. What's remarkable about it is that studios seem to think that generic prospects can be worth spending $130 million on producing, and then putting it out in the cinema expecting that they will get more than that back in the box office. If you'd spend a half of that amount of money, maybe you'd be looking at a profitable film. And that's probably about the amount of money that the concept and the idea deserves. But I think probably for the last sort of 10 years, when you look at the way the box office breaks down, and actually, overall it's made a huge amount of money. But then if you look at how much is being taken by anything that isn't Marvel, Avatar, Jurassic World, it's generally quite a small amount. The health of the broader box office is not great at the moment. And that's probably because all of these eggs are being put into very, very few baskets. But the impact of that is that studios are saying, well, any given new property could theoretically earn us $1 billion. So of course it's worth spending 150 to try and put one out. That's not ever. I don't think that's ever been how cinema has worked, is it? I mean, look at the number of forgettable Sylvester Stallone action films.
Right, but they were usually more like, they'd end up on cable where either they became cult classics or we ended up talking about them, making fun of them. But I think there's also another factor in here, which is at the same time that you have Fall Guy coming out, you still have this, like Rasmussen put out a poll 5 days ago where they asked 3,000 people what their response was, how they viewed Disney first. And they said in 2022, 38% of the people viewed Disney as an unfavorable company. Today, it's 48%. And they said, how do you view Hollywood studios in general? And they view most Hollywood studios in a generic sense up to 51% unfavorable. So I think you're having a rise of people like who are the normies are starting to wake up, and they see that comedy die. Then all of a sudden they see the Netflix comedy roast for Tom Brady, and they're like, oh, things are coming back. Or they hear Jerry Seinfeld comedy's dead, and they see one movie after the other flop. They turn on their television, they see one bad series after that. I think they're just holding on.
Well, I think particularly though with this film, there's obviously been a lot of criticism of Disney movies and perhaps Hollywood movies in general that they push political agendas, they're preachy, they're annoying, and it's pissing people off. This movie is the antithesis of that. There's no agenda here. It doesn't really push any messaging. It's just a generic kind of action comedy movie. And you would think that would be a welcome relief for people. To say, hey, just a big budget movie that's not trying to like drive home any social political commentary on me. Yeah. It's just there to have a bit of fun.
I think that's
the paucity of that argument, though, isn't it? I mean, that was always the problem. Whenever you criticize a film that people sort of vaguely, slightly like, I think this was true of Avatar: The Way of Water, I think, and probably also Jurassic World Dominion. Like it comes out and it's not very good, but some people like it, and you say, well, and they will tell you, hey, at least it's not pushing an agenda on me. At least the film doesn't hate me. And I've heard this so many times, and I keep trying to say this is not a standard. If that's how low your bar is, then you should raise your own bar. Just to say that it doesn't hate me, therefore it's good, is pretty whack as a like an audience metric. And I think the paucity of that argument is revealed by the fact that just not hating your audience is not enough to make a film make a huge amount of money, because that shouldn't be enough to make a film make a huge amount of money. It should be the bare minimum requirement. That's enough to get some people to go and watch it. It's not enough to get lots of people to go for repeat viewings.